Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Richard Nixon Presidential Library and Birthplace in Yorba Linda, California. We're delighted you are here joining us in the East Room, an exact replica of the America's Grand Ballroom at the White House in Washington, D.C. You're great to be here. We've got a terrific program tonight with Dr. Buzz Aldrin, the second man to walk on the moon, and he'll walk in here in just a few minutes. But first, he wanted you to see a movie on Apollo 11. So we're going to view that now for a few minutes, and then we'll bring in astronaut Aldrin. Thank you.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
You are go for staging. Houston, Apollo 11 hit that and gave us a magnificent ride. I'd like to trace through a little bit for you developments that have taken place in the food department. In fact, on this flight, we've carried along pieces of bread. Along with the bread, we have a ham of bread.
Retro, go. Rhino, go. Guidance, go. Control, go. Telcom, go. GNC, go. Ecom, go. Surgeon, go. Capcom, we're go for landing.
Eagle, Houston, you're go for landing, over. Roger, understand, go for landing. 3,000 feet. Roger, 1201 alarm.
1201 alarm.
Same type, we're go, flight. We're
Okay,
go,
we're go.
Same type, we're go. 40 feet down, 2.5. Picking up some dust. 30 feet, 2.5 down. Straight shadow. Contact light. Okay, engine stop. Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again.
I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one I am pleased for me incoming. I want to back up and partially close the hatch. Making sure not to lock it on my way out. That's our home for the next couple hours. We want to take good care of it. Beautiful view. Magnificent desolation. Now we'll get to the details of what's around here, but it looks like a collection of just about every variety of shape, angularity, granularity, but every variety of rock you could find.
Because of what you have done, the heavens have become a part of man's world. For one priceless moment in the whole history of man, all the people on this earth are truly one.
Buzz, this is Houston. You have approximately 3 minutes until you must commence your EVA termination activity. Over.
Roger, understand.
Tranquility Base, Houston. You're cleared for takeoff.
Roger, understand. We're number 1 on the runway. We've come to the conclusion that this has been far more than 3 men on a voyage to the moon. More still than the efforts of a government and industry team. More even than the efforts of one nation. We feel that this stands as a symbol of the insatiable curiosity of all mankind to explore the unknown.
We set sail on this new sea because there is new knowledge to be gained and new rights to be won, and they must be won and used for the progress of all people. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
Thank you both for coming. To your right is Leonard David, who is the co-author of Buzz's great book on Mars and a longtime space journalist, and he's going to moderate this discussion with astronaut Aldrin. Gentlemen.
Well, thanks so much for being here in a great facility at a great period of time. We're going to discuss for a few 10 or 15, 20 minutes or so the book, but we do want you to read the book. So please read the book. Can't get all of it in, but we're going to take our time to put you back toward that landing. I mean, I grew up in San Diego myself, waiting for that great moment in history. And I just recall that historic moment in the sense of the last few thousand feet, alarms are going off, things are happening on the landing. How did that feel to you at that moment in time. Because in the book, we talk about a lot of the what ifs. What if this didn't go right or that? How about for you?
We trained many, many times in the simulator, and we'd kind of go down and we'd pitch forward so the landing radar would start sending up information to the computer, and everything kind of went along reasonably well in the trainer. And then all of a sudden we get bing, 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 bing. We got an alarm. And when you get a computer alarm, we only have 3 display registers anyway of numbers. It doesn't tell you go do this or go do that. It's just numbers. You're supposed to know what the numbers are. But when the program alarm comes on, you got nothing. All it says is 12:02. Well, what the hell does that mean? Well, there is a dictionary, a guidance and navigation dictionary. And it's kind of right down here in between the two of us. And if you had nothing else to do, you could pull it out and kind of leaf through. We had something else to do. So Neil said, Houston, give us a reading on the 12:02 alarm. Because, of course, they see immediately what we see on the computer, too. And they see scads more. They see all sorts of things that are going on the spacecraft. So we don't have to look at everything. And it wasn't very long before the capsule communicator, who's always an astronaut talking to other astronauts, says, we're going that alarm. So that's okay. 2 or 3 minutes later, it comes on again, and okay, you'll go to. And then we got down about 3,000 feet, and
by then you were reading the book?
No. By the alarm changed. It's now 12:01. And the smart guy who's 25, 26 years old, you know, he knew all about guidance and navigation, computer systems, and he was familiar, and he says, we're going that one too. So we ease on down, and at 500 feet, all the commanders who had trained, because they were the ones that were really in charge of everything that happened, and us guys were helping them along by watching the abort guidance system, the primary guidance system, the fuel quantity, and the reaction control systems. And but they all decided that they didn't want to let the computer touch down. It could have, but it might have touched down on the edge of a crater or this or that, and you wouldn't want that to happen. So they all decided about 500 feet they would begin to take over just a slight manual guidance. And it wasn't very drastic at all, unless you wanted to do something kind of unusual. That way, we'd make sure that the computer wouldn't land us in the wrong place, but it would have a little smarts. So about that time, when Neil saw that we were kind of heading toward a crater that had a lot of rocks around it, and it didn't look too good. Now, if you decide you want to land short of the crater, you got to pitch up like this, and you probably won't see where you're going when you pitch up. So that's not too good. If you want to go over here, you go, and then go over there. And that's not too good. Best thing to do is just pitch forward a little bit, fly over, and land over there. The only trouble is, it takes more time, and you use more fuel. So that's what we did, and that's the normal thing you'd expect a cautious pilot to do. So when we got to about 100 feet, Charlie Duke, the capsule communicator, says, 60 seconds. And I see the low quantity light come on. That means 1% or whatever it means we got 60 seconds of fuel left. 100 feet, I was getting a little worried. But I didn't want to disturb this test pilot on my left. I didn't want to get him anxious about anything. He was doing a pretty good job. 30 seconds, we're down to 10 feet. We had it made by that time. And of course, we get down that low, the sun is behind us, we're looking out, and we're casting the shadow, so I can see the shadow of us in front, and it's coming up closer and closer. Pretty soon, it's getting very hazy. Well, the haziness is the dust that the engine is kicking up in the shadow, and then we touch down, and a little light comes on. It's the contact light. So I say, contact light, engine stop, and a few other things to sort of clean up the cockpit. So you think Neil's first words were a small step? Contact light.
When you guys are there on the moon and your dust is settled, you realize you've made it. Not only made it in the 1960s, but really for a centuries-long dream of people going to another world. What did you guys communicate right away? Were you quiet? What did you look at each other?
Neil seems to remember that we shook hands. I seem to remember slapping him on the shoulder. Whatever it was, we were congratulating each other. But it wasn't a moment for a great reflection because things could be leaking that we wouldn't know about. And if they're leaking, why, our buddy Mike Collins is going like that overhead. And there are certain times when if we have to lift off, we should lift off at a certain time. And, yeah. And that's called T1, T2, T3. And it takes about two and a half minutes. Those are minutes when you should be concentrating on, is there anything wrong? Is there anything wrong? Okay, we're by that. Okay, now we're here to stay. For how long? 2 hours. Because that's when he's going to come around again. Well, you know, years before, Jack Schmidt and I agreed that maybe the best thing you ought to do during those 2 hours when you're waiting for him to come around again is to practice the liftoff procedures. So we put that in the checklist and aligned the platform, did this and that. And so we became very familiar with what we would do maybe 20 hours later. And it was a good thing because it, you know, if something did go wrong in those 2 hours, you already had it set down and you would train this way. Follow-on crews occasionally didn't do what the previous crew did. And sometimes it's for spite. Sometimes they say, oh, what the hell, they didn't know what they were doing. But you always wonder when somebody following you doesn't do what you thought was a good idea. Are they crazy? You know, don't they realize how smart we are?
So Neil's down on the surface, and you're looking out the window. And I think you're in the book we talk about, well, it looked good down there. He didn't fall over.
No.
Nothing happened. So your reaction was smooth sailing. Let me get down the ladder and join you. And
sure.
What's the next phase for you getting off that?
Well, when you look at it on the camera, it's 1 frame a second, so it looks like everybody's kind of jerkily moving around. But I could see, looking out the window, that when he was on the surface, what he was doing was gathering up a contingency sample, a little scoop that went in the bag of lunar dust, so that when he put it in a pocket in the thigh of his suit, If anything happened from that point on and he had to get back in again or whatever, at least we had one small bag of dust. Interesting story about that, because when we did all the formal rock picking and the experiments deploying the laser reflector and the seismometer and the solar wind collector, and then all the rocks, and we got back in again, all the rocks were in a box, sealed, and except the dust on our boots and suit, except for that little sample. And so the procedure was to take that sample and put it where we could watch it, because there were some diehard people who were doomsday predictors no matter what. And they said, as soon as you expose that lunar dust to 100% oxygen, it's going to burst into flames. We didn't think it would, and it didn't. But we had to do that because you're always trying to protect. Now, the funny thing is, I thought that was kind of silly, and my uncle had been down there the night before launch, and so I told him this silly story about putting that sample over here. And on his ride back here to California in the airplane, he started explaining who he was and where he'd been and what I said, and it turned out that there was a reporter right next to him who was getting this scoop. And the newspaper the next day said, Aldrin fears lunar rocks.
There you go. But I have to protect the journalist because he spelled your name right. Everything was right.
He did,
right?
He
okay.
did, yeah.
And
but it was
that's what
Buzz,
we tried to do, yeah. But now it's Buzz. Well, I know in the book we talk a lot about the stepping stones, because not only Apollo was significant, but also the Mercury, Gemini into the Apollo program. And one of the things we're trying to emphasize in the book is certainly getting back into gear and doing things in a procedural manner. We've lost the space shuttle programs now, gone. You feel like we really need to start aligning our own space stars into a kind of a multi-pronged effort to get to Mars.
Yeah, it was pretty easy to put one guy in one spacecraft and called Mercury. Then, as we were planning that, we knew that Apollo was going to be quite complex, and we're probably going to send 3 people up there. And the way that the procedure went, we were going to have 2 spacecraft, not just one big that would take both of us down. That wasn't quite as efficient as separating the spacecraft into a command module, a service module that would burn up on reentry. And while we're at the moon, we had a lander and an ascent stage, and both of those would be left at the moon after we would join up with the command and service module, then they'd come back. So we split the thing up, and it was much easier that way. Where was I going?
Well, I was just trying to get to the fact that we had this early Mercury,
Okay.
Gemini.
So we knew that Apollo was going to be complex one way or the other, but we had some time, and we needed to do some more. So we came up with a filler program with 2 people in the spacecraft, and it was probably one of the wisest decisions made during the one-man Mercury program of let's build another spacecraft called Gemini, with 2 guys in it. There's a constellation of 2 stars up in the sky. So 2 guys in this spacecraft really did tremendous preparation work that we couldn't do with the one-man spacecraft. It did long-duration flights, 2 weeks. Did rendezvous with another spacecraft, opened a hatch, did spacewalks, and then we did computer-guided reentry. All of those were really essential things do as the interim.
And you flew that last Gemini mission that really gave us a lot of spacewalk experience, because up to that point we had a lot of problems with spacewalking. You used some of your interest in scuba diving to bring about buoyancy tank training and that kind of thing.
I think the people felt that you needed to sort of move yourself around along the rails and position yourself using a good bit of muscular strength. And you get tired when you do that, and you over-control, and you exert, and you perspire, and the mass fogs over. So because of things like that, little things frustrate you if you're not just easy going and relaxed. And so we had a number of cancellations of the complete spacewalk and didn't feel very confident. And of course, the one major experiment that I was familiar with, being an Air Force guy, was the Air Force #1 experiment. It was a backpack maneuvering unit with hydrogen peroxide. So you got in the back of the spacecraft, backed into that, made all the connections, and then you disconnected, and you would sort of fly around the spacecraft. And that would have been one of the most enjoyable experiences for a pilot, to be separated from the other spacecraft. But they canceled the program because they thought it was a little too complicated, and I should have said, hey, look, I know what I'm doing. We've been training underwater, because I was a scuba diver, and I accepted a suggestion that we have a spacesuit on, get down underwater with weights so that we would be buoyant, just neutrally, and you just move around very slowly. And as most divers know, if there's a current, you don't fight the current, you sort of align yourself with it. And I knew things were going to work, but I didn't assert myself loud enough to my detriment and to the experiment's detriment. So we came up a little short by not getting the fullest out of that last mission that we could have.
But you're floating.
As it was a great success, and so it put me in good position to be in the rotation of the Apollo missions.
But you're floating at 17,000 miles an hour.
Outside.
Yeah. And you're saying you were relaxed and it was very easy. Is that what you were, because of all that underwater experience? You can be relaxed at that speed and look at the earth.
You can hold on to something with 2 fingers and just kind of slowly move yourself along. Or you can grab it like this, and you're going to get all overheated if you're not careful.
Well, so all the experience that we gained in those periods of human spaceflight, those early great milestone-making periods, leading to Apollo and all the landings. Then we have today, and let's jump a little bit to today. I mean, when you go, we write a lot about, you talked about leadership in America and what that means to you, and how that should be represented by a strong space program. The space program you envision that we need either to revisit or re-strengthen is what? What today should we?
Well, I thought after Apollo, we would finish out the Apollo missions, even though we canceled the last 2 or 3 because we'd done so well. 6 out of 7 successful landings. Only Apollo 13 had to come back. So we canceled a couple of them, but we did some other things with the equipment. We had a long-duration Skylab mission where we sent 3 people up for 28 days and 56 days and 80-some days. Then we did a joint mission with the Russians, all of this after Apollo. But we still didn't have the next program ready to go. We made a few mistakes in not doing a particular program that would have been very helpful today, but because of some errors in safety aspects and cost overruns, we had to quickly put together the space shuttle, not as a steady progress, but sort of in a hurry. And as it was, we went about 7 years without flying anybody after the mission with the Russians. So we started flying the shuttle, and it didn't quite live up to expectations. It was a very complex, big spacecraft because it had crew and cargo, a big cargo bay, all in the same airplane that would come back instead of separating the crew and cargo, which is certainly one recommendation of the accident board after the Columbia accident. Yeah.
After the Columbia accident.
So it was not really living up to its expectations. So after the accident board, we'd been looking at things to do in the future with only 3. So we decided, well, we'd take about 7 years to the end of 2010, and then we'd retire the orbiter, because for sure we'd have some replacement by that time. We would finish the space station, retire the orbiter, build a spacecraft, and we'd land on the moon by 2020. That's not going to happen because it was implemented poorly with the 2 rockets and a solid rocket for the crew instead of kind of one standardized rocket. I could kind of see this coming, and that's why it hurt even more that that when we had to cancel that program of landing on the moon in 2020, we're waiting around for the shuttle replacement, and it isn't coming because we don't have the rocket.
So here we are today.
Here we are today. We don't have the replacement for the shuttle. And the Chinese just sent 3 people up, and the Russians have been going steady as could be. And the Russians now upped the price of taking us up to our $100 billion space station. So it's now $70 million a seat. Well, the first tourist only paid about $15 million. So you see what happens when supply and demand kind of kick in, and somebody has something and you want it, and he wants to get all he can out of you.
So the Russians are showing us capital.
We're in not good shape right now.
Yeah.
And we can look back and see why, and we shouldn't be making those kind of mistakes.
Now, you mentioned the Chinese. They just launched this morning. Yeah, 3 people. They go into a space module of their own that they launched previously, and they're going to rendezvous and dock with that. There's 2 men and a woman. She's going to do some actually lessons from the laboratory up there for Chinese students. Are you?
Now, it doesn't have to be that way. We could have, but we didn't.
Yeah.
We could have invited them along with the other partners of a space station. But there's some people that are just so concerned about Chinese stealing this or stealing that, so we just push them away. To me, that's the surest way of keeping nations apart, of providing friction in the future. And so that's kind of why we have a space station. They're building one. Obviously, the focus is going to be on doing something at the moon. Now, if we send our astronauts back to the moon, we've already been there. We already know what people can do. A nation today does something like that for national pride and prestige. Let's admit it. We were sort of in competition with the Russians, and we decided to do something that we thought they wouldn't be able to do before we did it. And we succeeded. We did that to show our people that we were right up there like we thought we always were. And it convinced the Russians, too, that when we get together and do something, we can really succeed. But other nations now, since that is a mark of progress, They want to do that too. But it's, I think, for prestige. Now, we've already done that, and if we did that again, it's estimated that the Chinese would be welcoming us when we get to the moon, because they'd get there first. Now, is that really what we want to have happen? There are a lot of things that if you are clever about it that we can do at the moon that exhibit leadership. We can bring the nations together. We can design the base. They can put the elements down there, and then we'll move them together so that they mate, they attach, so that you can go from one element to the other. The electrical connections, these are big objects, and it may be easier to dock two big things in space, but when you're on uneven surface and you got to move them, it's more difficult. And we need to learn how to do that before going to the moon. So guess what? We're going to use the big island of Hawaii as the proving ground. We're going to pre-position the first item that would land, and then we're going to position the second item where we think it would like to land. Then through satellite, we're going to move them together, and they probably won't work. So then we'll find out why they didn't work, go and change it, and learn piece by piece how to do something complex like this.
So that's the training ground to get back to the moon and with these robots.
Why do we do that? From a spaceport 50,000 miles away, we do that on the moon, so we will know how to do that at Mars, where we will occupy one of the moons of Mars, and then when people land things internationally on the moon, on Mars, just like the moon, we'll move them together again until we've built a rather most adequate base on Mars for permanent people to land. They won't go down there until it's kind of finished and all checked out.
Well, take us to Mars and talk about how the window, in your mind, of opportunity exists for, again, leadership of the president to make some kind of commitment that was similar to what led you to the moon. But what about Mars?
I guess for 20 years now, I've been sort of looking at how we could put things together, and there was an opportunity with the new President Obama taking over for a commission to look at things. So I put together a sequence of events that I thought we ought to be doing that would take advantage of the assembly of things at the moon, and then from these stations that we occupied and controlled robots on the surface, and that then we'd go a little further away and a little further away, and eventually we'd go to the moons of Mars. And from the moons of Mars, we'd build a station, and then cycling orbits, something that I sort of pioneered the idea, the concept, the discovery of having something leave the Earth, fly by Mars, and then swing by Mars and come back to the Earth at just the right time, angle, velocity, so you swing by the Earth at just the right time so that you go back to Mars again. And you keep doing that every 26 months. It's a little more than 2 years. And this becomes a perpetual cycling spacecraft. So what good is that? Well, as it swings by the Earth, you intercept it and then throw away the empty rockets, and you ride the cycler till it gets to Mars, and then you get off of it. All the time you're getting there, you're living with the protection of the cycler and all of its increased room, so that when you get into the lander, as you approach, then you land directly.
And that's sustainable. That's the point. It's economically...
It's sustainable. For really ideal case, you need two of these, one every other opportunity, So you have a redundancy built in, you have a resupply capability. All of these we've improved recently by work that's been done at Purdue University, and they fed me the results, and I put them on a diagram, and it really looks very, very professional, and that's what we ought to be doing. I'm absolutely convinced. After all, I do have a doctor's degree from MIT, and I did develop these rendezvous techniques. But why isn't NASA paying any attention to this particular innovation with a major university?
We've sent them a lot of books.
I don't understand it, really. But that's the way government is. So that's what occupies my time, trying to say, hey, don't land people back on the moon. We'll be way behind. Let's do things that we can learn from at the moon, build the base, learn how to control things. We can even form partnerships with other countries that are landing and coming back up so that they can bring the ice that we find in these craters. It's one of the major resources that's considered at the moon now useful to us. We can bring the ice up to one of the stations and convert it to hydrogen and oxygen, and that's rocket propellant. So we now have partnered internationally to form a fuel depot for us to use and other people to use. So everything kind of we do at the moon contributes, but it doesn't cost a lot of money. It's things we should be doing.
Now, there's a window of American leadership that you talked about in the book.
Okay. That's
and it's an anniversary.
Yeah, all right.
Because the fuse is sort of lit about a president actually making a determination.
A lot of people have said that the conditions for Kennedy were just so ideal, the Cold War, Russia doing this, we're doing this, to come up with a combination that just made a commitment to land a man on the moon within a decade and bring him back safely. And a lot of people said that will never occur again. Well, I'm determined to try and force it to happen again. And I think the ideal time in the future is to reflect back on really where a lot of this started, where were our greatest successes. The 50th anniversary of the 6 landings on the moon. And during that time period is an ideal time for a future president to, as I would word it, I believe that this nation should commit itself within 2 decades to American-led international permanence on the planet Mars.
Ladies,
just think how important the historians and the people 100,000 years from now, when humans from the Earth all have decided to begin a growing colony on another planet. Those people who do that are going to be down in history forever. And the world leader who makes that commitment. I hope you understand that. Now, it's my job to convince whoever is the president that that's the kind of legacy that they should be seeking. And I've got a couple of things that can be done by this president that'll make it easy for the next one. And of course, he wants the same party to follow him. So he's going to help that. You can see the political intrigue going on right now.
Last thing before, because we're going to show a video here, right?
We'll end it on the political intrigue.
Yeah.
Please thank astronaut Aldrin and Leonard David. Now, it's not over yet. It's not over yet. It's not over till the rap singer dances and sings. So, who would have thought that somebody who graduated from West Point, third in his class, who is a PhD from MIT, went to the moon. Richard Nixon gave him the Medal of Freedom. Isn't that the last person you'd think would be in a rap video? Well, we've got a surprise for you, no, and here he is, ladies and gentlemen, the Rocket Experience.
Buzz, this is Houston. You've got about 10 minutes left now. 10 minutes left now prior to commencing your EVA termination activities. Over.
All you need is the rocket experience. What you need is the rocket experience. All you need is the rocket experience.
To go flying into outer space. See this world as a beautiful place. All mankind, one human race.
I tell a story about my time on the moon now. The sky was black even though the sun shined on. Moonwalking, such a trip, it's so fine when you're walking in the lunar dust. It took us 4 days riding on a rocket to set foot for the very first time. I'm gonna tell you about the meaning of it all. We came in peace for all mankind. Imagine a place above the sky, riding orbits in 90 minutes time. All you need is to come with me. I'll be your guide.
To go flying into outer space. See this world as a beautiful place. All mankind, one human race.
Are you ready to put on your spacesuit? Strapped in for the G-force liftoff. Countdown is getting very close now to the adventure of a lifetime. I've been there, now I say it's your turn. All we gotta do is make the engine burn. Let's take a trip on an orbital spaceship. This is how we will reach the stars. Stars, 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 stars.
No atmosphere here. Make sure that you've got your feet underneath you. Lack of gravity. Lack of gravity. Lack of gravity. Gravity.
All you need is the rocket experience.
Beautiful view. Magnificent desolation.
What you need is the rocket experience.
Buzz, you're cleared for takeoff.
All you need is the rocket experience.
Roger, understand. We're number one on the runway.
All you need is the rocket experience. It's all you need.
To go flying into outer space.
I am the spaceman.
See this world as a beautiful place.
I am the rocket man.
All mankind, one human race.
It's time to venture far. Let's take a trip to Mars. Our destiny is to the stars.
Mission sequence starts. 5, 3, 2,
All you need is the rocket experience.
The words are really good, but I think we need subtitles so that they can read the words not just good.
Buzz, if you don't make it in space, you can make it in Hollywood. I want to be your agent, okay? Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to questions. So if you raise your hand, and I will bring the microphone to you, and if you'll stand up and ask the question, then they'll answer it. We're going to start with one of our science students. So step up here and state your name and ask the question.
Okay. My name is Sean, and my question is, well, before you, a lot of astronauts went on missions, and a lot of them failed. When you were in the rocket, what were you thinking about past failures? Were you worried about getting hurt or possibly killed while on the mission?
Well, when I was 21, I learned to fly an airplane. And we learned that occasionally the engine quits. And if it quits on takeoff, you got a problem. You got to somehow crash land or do something. You get used to going through these critical times and being as alert as possible, not letting fear. Fear is a clouding emotion. It tends to paralyze clear thinking. So you want to avoid getting caught up in worrying about this or that, because it hadn't happened yet. There's plenty of time if something goes wrong, hopefully, to fix it. That's the time to really think about it and worry about it. So we learned to do that. I did, and then I got to experience being in combat where they're firing flak at you, and you're trying to position and shoot down another airplane, and he's trying to shoot you down. And you need to be calm and collected and precise and know exactly what you're doing. And don't allow something to interfere, like, see, I wonder if he's going to do this or that, because you'll make a mistake. So in space, there are a lot of things that can go wrong, and we've seen pictures of rockets that have a fire or an explosion on launch, but there's an escape tower up there on Mercury. We had ejection seats on the two-man Gemini, and we had an escape tower on Apollo. And if something goes wrong, it'll pull you away and separate, and then you'll be coming down in the parachute. Most of it is pretty automatic. You just kind of hope it all works. And you have to put your trust and faith in these people and the testing that you do on all these components. Because if you start worrying about it, you're just liable to make things worse.
Now, somebody said that a journalist asked you another what-if question. If the engine on the moon didn't ignite, what would you do? It was like you were supposed to pray and then just run out of oxygen. But you said you'd go out and fix it.
Yeah, you'd keep very busy trying to fix what the problem is.
As you know, we are live streaming on Nixon TV, on YouTube, all over the internet. So we're taking some questions from the internet. And the first one is, and I'll read it to you because you can't see it, it's from Patrick McFawn in Los Angeles. What role does the private sector, like Virgin Galactic, SpaceX, etc., have in the future of space travel, and how can the U.S. government remain on the forefront of space exploration in a post-Cold War world?
We'll always have innovators coming along with different ways of doing things. The Wright brothers, all the other inventions that sort of came along. Then we had something called the autogyro that had an engine and flew, but instead of wings, it had something. And then a helicopter. Somebody's always coming along with a new, innovative, and you hope that there will be a use for it. If there isn't, you're going to go broke if you get investors. So you invest in new things, and a lot of times the government helps do some of the research. Before NASA, it was called the National Aeronautics
National Aeronautics Committee.
National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics. Okay, they did a lot of research on wind tunnels and things, and they helped the airlines and the private industry airplanes. Well, now we have the opportunity between where the early Mercury and going to the moon, and now what we're going to do next. We can take people in an airplane that does this. It gives you about 25 seconds of floating, or we can take a rocket over 100 kilometers, and now you got 4 or 5 minutes of floating around inside the spacecraft. And those are things that, well, the government doesn't need to do that. We did that with two guys, Alan Shepard and Gus Grissom, before we put John Glenn into orbit. So the suborbital is something that is sort of an interim exposure. Now, it is quite expensive to get somebody like the Russians to fly some tourist into orbit. 20, 30, 40 million dollars. People have done it, but there are not that many people. So we've instituted this suborbital of going up at least 100 kilometers, and there's several companies competing to do that are not government, they're private, and they're trying to make a profit out of what they're doing. There are some other private proposals that would like to inspire the nation. Right now, there's a very, to me, very welcome one that would come much earlier than I think the government has ever thought of leaving the Earth, flying around the moon, and coming back to Earth. There are opportunities to do that, and this company wants to do it in January of 2018.
But you have no doubt that space tourism, just like getting on a plane at LAX, I mean, that's really the future of what you see. People will be able to board some kind of craft and go into Earth orbit and become vacationers in space.
That's stretching things a little bit when you consider the cost of an airline ticket, and you consider that private flights might be a couple of $1 million. There's not too many people that are going to want to do that, but there will be some. There certainly will, and we can do competitive ways. My idea a number of years ago was to have a lottery for these different space exposures. Then a company called Axe came along, the fragrance and perfume and hairspray and deodorant for young guys to attract cute little girls. Anyway, there are 22 flights that they've bought of one of the companies, and they'll be deciding on this before the year is out, who are the 22 winners. And of course, Richard Branson has a more publicized, exotic way with a big airplane and a rocket that does that. So there's several different ways of exposing people to increasing excitement and experiences of floating in space and looking back at the Earth from a great distance away. There are companies, one company in the Netherlands that is called Mars One. And Mars One, one-way trip. And I wouldn't have called it one-way trip, but they do. Now, it costs a little more than $10 to apply for a chance.
And how many people have
78,000 people have applied. And 17,000 from the United States and 10,000 from China. You know, they're not sitting back. They're quite interested in doing what comes along. Now, do I really think that by 2023 that they'll be able to put together a space program to do that? I've yet to be even closely convinced that they can do that, but at least it is exciting people about the idea. That's the wrong idea. It's see, I don't call it that. I call it building up permanent settlement. It's permanence, not one-way trips. I don't think the Pilgrims thought they were on a one-way trip on the Mayflower.
Next is a young lady
came over here to settle.
A young lady from Fontana.
Hi, Hi, I'm Carrie. I'm a child of the space program from Mercury, Gemini to Apollo. It's an honor to be in your presence. Do you think they'll find a habitable planet or alien life in the next 100 years or so?
Alien life in the next 100 years or so. I was down on the street the other day, and I'm not sure. Anyway.
Well, years ago, I wrote a science fiction story about aliens that came here from the nearest star. And at the time, we here on Earth had not discovered any other planets around any other stars. And now there are thousands of them that have been discovered.
And we lost Pluto.
Some of them.
We lost Pluto. We gained all those planets.
He wagged his tail too much, I think, or something. There are billions of galaxies like our Milky Way galaxy, and it's got 1 billion stars in it, and certainly a lot of these are going to have planets, and some of them are going to have conditions that are suitable for mushrooms and crabs and worms and monkeys and humans. No, something else. They won't look like us. We're obviously a special species. and we think we're intelligent, too.
All right, a A+ student in science from Westminster, 14 years old.
My name is Dan, and with the end of the space shuttle program, what do you think is the best way we'll get U.S. citizens into space without depending on Russia, like paying them $424 million?
Well, the commercial companies of SpaceX and Boeing and one that lands on a runway called Sierra Nevada, they've proposed commercial ways, and it hasn't been, unfortunately, total agreement between the two parties as to what they want to do. If President Obama says, we're not going to send astronauts back to the moon, guess what? The Republicans are for sending people back to the moon.
Right, I'm going to go to our global audience.
I know where we are. We're in the fringes of Orange County. I used to live here. But I work for whoever's making the decisions, and I'm trying to skew him or her my way.
One more from our YouTube global audience, and this is from Charles Beck of Flagstaff, Arizona. What should we colonize on Mars when there are thousands of miles of undeveloped land in the United States and around the world? The question is, why should we colonize on Mars? You want me to repeat that?
No, I understand that. Because if we don't, Russia will, China will, and other countries. Is that what we want to happen? I don't think so. I grew up in a country that I thought was special, and it was, because it responded. It responded to Pearl Harbor, and we won that one with the Greatest Generation. And it has responded to the Cold War. I shot a couple of their planes down. I was on alert with nuclear weapons. I have a tender spot for the English-speaking nations of the world, and I'll go out on a limb and say that if radicalism spreads across the world, it'll be the English-speaking nations that control it, put an end to the threats of our way of life.
We have time for 2 more questions. This one right here from James from Orange County. James. so you no doubt believe that man will get to Mars. Do you think that that will be done through the Orion project, the Orion capsule that's being currently developed to go to Mars?
Orion, yes, it seemed to me on its original schedule it was supposed to be ready to fly when the shuttle was retired. We didn't have a rocket. It wasn't the rocket they wanted, but there are other rockets, but it's not ready yet. And it discourages me that designing something that is so similar to what Apollo was should take so long, cost so much money, and not meet its schedule. And we're not going to be at the top of the heap if we keep building things that don't meet the requirements that we know we need. If we design, if a group of people want to build a rocket and they get Congress to legislate, mandate that NASA use heritage components, you know what that means to me? Old stuff. Okay? That means we're going to use things that keep people in the same jobs they're in now so we don't develop new things. So we go into the rest of the 21st century with old stuff. We're not going to end up on top. But it happens to be pleasing to certain members of Congress because it keeps jobs the way they are, and that keeps votes coming in, and all of that is short-term objective. And we're in a world that has to look 20, 40 years ahead and not just satisfy immediate. We're still only 0.5% of the budget is going to NASA. And in Apollo, which was not as sophisticated as Mars is going to be, we were up to 4% in order to get there in pretty much of a hurry. And we just have to look at our priorities. Where do we want this nation to be in 10, 20, 40 years? Do we want to be saying to our youngsters, well, let's see, if you want to get a ride into space, you're going to have to speak Russian, or you're going to have to go over to China? It may happen that way, and it takes leadership and commitments. And it takes joining together nations.
Great. We're going to take, thank you. We're going to take our final question from our online audience. Please put the question up and I'll read it. It is, would you share any spiritual insights you experienced during your time in space or while on the moon?
I felt so honored to be able to have worked out with the vicissitudes of selection and rotation of crews to be, lo and behold, on possibly the first landing on the moon. And I was quite interested in the symbolism that we would choose as a crew to represent our mission. And eventually we settled on a symbol of an eagle. That was the name of our spacecraft, the symbol of our nation, the eagle, with the Earth in the background, about to land on the moon. And, you know, that looked pretty good. So we took it in for some of our computer people to kind of look at and say what they liked or not. And when we came out of the simulator, this guy said, why don't you have the eagle carrying the olive branch of peace? Oh, man, that really put meaning into what you saw in that plaque. We came in peace for all mankind. So that's what we did with our patch. I felt that if we successfully landed, I wanted to do something that maybe I had grown up with or learned in that time period of my life. So I got permission to serve myself communion on the moon. But the boss man said, yeah, okay, you can do that, but just don't say anything about it, because we have enough trouble with Madeleine Murray O'Hare, because those guys read from the Bible while they were going around the moon at Christmas time, Genesis. So I just asked people to consider the events of the last several hours, and each one to pause and give thanks in their own particular way. Now that was me, a thankful 39-year-old. I've gone through a lot of transitions from that point on in my life and been exposed to a lot of deep thinkers and have modified, but I don't feel I need to enlighten people as to the way one should believe or guide their lives. I've worked with psychiatrists to overcome depression that led to alcoholism, and I have 34 years of sobriety and a higher power that comes from that kind of a program that is very general. It's just getting you out of the act of what you do and doing things for the betterment of humanity or helping someone else. So I think each individual kind of goes through their understandings of how the universe came to be and what is behind it, what kind of intelligence put things in motion, gave us the freedom to choose going one way or the other way, and then deal with the consequences. We're not rote, we're not on puppets on strings. We're pretty free to have great success and free to fail.
Thank you, sir. Thanks to both of you. Vanna, what did they win? We have, for each of you, a custom-made, limited edition beverage mug that has the message, "What would Nixon do?" on it. These are numbered and made especially for you, only limited to the number we can sell in the gift shop, which, by the way, they are for sale in the gift shop. And if you join the membership, you can get one free tonight. But we thank you for coming. There's one for each of you. And with any luck, the price tag has been taken off the bottom of it. They both have agreed to sign the book. You will see them next in the lobby signing your books. We don't have time to inscribe, but we will autograph. Thank you for coming. God bless both of you. God bless America.